so happy to be here. I am first generation Guyanese American, and this is just such a pleasure to be in conversation with you today. So I think we should just go right into it. What brought you to Guyana, and what were your initial feelings going into documenting a post-colonial Guyana in the 1970s?
I didn't go down to Guyana to document a post-colonial anything. I went down to Guyana because Tom Feelings was there.
Okay.
He had decided to live there, and I'm saying, oh, what's going on? Because he was a very close friend of mine. So I said, let me go down and see what's happening, you know? And he kept saying, come on down, you know, and I got a nice place, and it turns out the place was by the seawall.
Yeah.
On the Fessenden Road, and you could see the seawall from his house, and I fell in love, you know. I stayed there for about 2 or 3 weeks, and to make a long story short, I came back to New York, closed down my affairs in New York. Within the next couple of months, I was in Guyana, you know. And once I got to Guyana, I found that I was even more smitten by the woodiness, by the craziness of Georgetown, by the beauty of Georgetown and whatnot. So it wasn't no getting me out of there. So I got my daughter down there too, and we started raising her down there.
Wow.
So it was Tom Feelings who got me there.
Tom Feelings, okay. What did you desire to depict in your photos going into the documentation journey? Did that desire change rapidly throughout your time there or gradually over the years?
Guyana is for me, was a place that is gradual.
Okay.
You know, if you try to take, like say, if you try to take the bustles in front of the Starbuck Market in one day or even 1 year, you're a fool. Mm-hmm. You know, it has to be a gradual coming up of that. And the pinnacle of that was, I don't know if you saw the picture of the 2 ladies in the background dressed in traditional dress with hats on. And in the foreground, you have this young lady with a striped mini dress on and boots. I don't know if you saw that film.
Yes.
Yes. I mean, a photograph.
She had like the high boot.
That to me was moving up gradually to really understanding what was going on in post-colonial Guyana, this, that, and the other. That photograph, I'm not proud of a whole lot of work I've done. That photograph, to me, emphasizes colonial, post-colonial.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And
that break.
Separate.
Yeah.
And then there were some other photographs with the Indian black thing and da-da-da, and then you had the mulatto thing, and so you can't shake it, you can't do it. You can't do it all, you know.
Yeah.
No, as a photographer, filmmaker, artist, you can't do it. And Tom was trying to do it too. You can't do it. I couldn't do it. You know, it had to be gradual.
Yeah. There's a lot to take in.
Yeah. And it's not a big country. It's not a very complicated country. It's not a whole lot of big buildings and, you know, like New York.
But there's so much nuance.
Yeah, very much so. Because you have these cultures down there, you know, that are really rich cultures. And, you know, I try to get as much of it as I possibly could.
I see that you have several photos with Guyanese artists, including Stanley Greaves. How did being around Greaves and other Guyanese artists at that time affect the way you maneuvered through Guyana? And how did these interactions positively enhance your practice?
These artists, Greaves and all the other artists that I met down there, had a tremendous amount of respect for Tom.
Okay.
Because Tom had been in Ghana, under Nkrumah. They knew of Tom. Tom was an African American who was an international person when he came to Guyana, okay? And he came ready to work. So his house, or what we used to say that his cave, was a hub for artists. Any time of the day, young artists, old artists would be coming in there trying to get him to help out with a project, and he was always open to that with young people. So it's like I was in that.
Yeah.
And it just was kind of easy to get to know these people and photograph these people and be with you, because all of this is going around you there and stuff. So it's kind of laid out for me. You know, the only thing I had to do was keep that rum out of my body and keep the mosquitoes off of me and take the photographs. Between the rum and the mosquitoes, I gave up the rum. Then the mosquitoes really took me over.
Really?
But in Tom's house is where Jimmy Manis really got to know the not black, they were Indian artists, they were, all kinds of artists coming through there. That's the kind of house it was, any time of the day.
From Harlem to the West Indies, you photographed all over, and you have been able to shed light on various forms of beauty and nuance within Black communities throughout the diaspora. Could you recall one memorable moment or overall essence in Guyana that is true to their environment and their environment only?
Well, some photographs that you never saw, or maybe have seen, but it wasn't in repartee, which is in the Rupununi, which is the desert of Guyana.
I've never been.
And I have never been in a desert on a cow ranch either. But Guyana offered me so much latitude working with the Ministry of Information, which is where I made my money and whatnot. And I could almost do anything I wanted to do, me and Bill. Bill was my associate down there. But when I went to the Rupununi, which is the desert part of Guyana, but they raised cows there, it was a pinnacle for me, because I had been in Texas around, but I had never been in an environment like this. And maybe one day you'll see the photographs. It just woke me up to the country and the diversity of the country. And I said, I got to stay here for a little while. These photographs weren't done overnight.
Yeah.
Jimmy Manis was working. And then I had to produce photographs for the Ministry of Information, because we had a Minister, Shirley Field Ridley, and then we had another minister before, and I can't think of his name, who told us very straight on, you're not coming down here on a holiday. So I produced this work you see, all right, along with the work I had to give them. Because I was, when they sent me to the Rupununi, I was shooting for them and shooting for me. And I had to turn that stuff in. Now you gotta understand, it's not like digital now. Jimmy Manis had to come home. Jimmy Manis had to go into the darkroom at the ministry, which we had built, develop the stuff, print the stuff, and have it for the minister the next morning after I got in. She wasn't hearing no thing that she was gonna have it in 2 or 3 days or anything like that. If I came into town, she wanted it the next morning. Not unless I came in at like 5 in the morning.
Okay. This is also not a part of my original questions, but how did that, what you were photographing for the minister versus your personal photographs, how did they differ?
They didn't differ.
Okay. It's just
but I know I had to have a split there.
Yeah.
When I went for the ministry, I knew that I had to get the local official, and they didn't want this stuff setting up like we're setting up here. They wanted something with the local official out doing what because the government was under Forbes Burnham.
Right.
So the reason why they had us down there to try to loosen up the whole visual field. And Shirley Field Ridley had been in England here and whatnot, and the other minister before her had been, and so they used us, and we trained the people down there to be more loose about the way they photograph. So when I went to the Rupununi and whatnot, it was like getting them out with their shirt off in the field, and I was doing my own photographs at the same time.
Everyday people things.
Yeah, definitely people. Because Burnham was about that, and that's one of the reasons why I stayed, is because he was really trying to do a more sharing, set up a more sharing society,
When I see many of your photos, I think about spaces that nurture community and conversation. Could you share a bit of insight to what you absorbed from your time at Starbrook Market and the Town Press?
Hysteria.
Yeah.
If you've been at Starbrook Market on any afternoon and the weather's nice, and right in front of Starbrook Market, anybody in Guyana can tell you, if it looks sane, I'm a foreigner, all right? It didn't look sane to me when it was fun. I was like, where are they going? You had donkeys, you had people, pushing cars, and then you had the big government trucks moving through there, and then you had the buses, and then the buses, oh man, and I'm saying, what the hell is going on here?
Organized chaos.
And then of course they had traffic lights and all that kind of stuff, but in front of Starbrook Market, I like to see it today, there was hysteria. I don't care what anybody's saying. I'd argue with Guyanese all for the rest of my life. I don't know about now, but then it was hysteria, and I wanted to photograph it. And I was there as much as I could. There's a whole lot of photographs in what we have here that maybe don't make sense, but I was trying to get that hysteria, you know. And but the thing about it is that people were getting it done.
Yeah.
You know, the Indian people, the black people, the mulatto people and whatnot were getting their shopping done. They were getting their kids to school. They were getting, you know, and I just wanted to be a part of that, you know. And that wasn't for the government. That was for me. Mm-hmm. You know, and in front of Starbuck Market in the middle of Georgetown, I loved it. You know, but I realized what it was. It wasn't sane. It definitely. I guess now it's more sane because it's, you know, it's got more sophisticated, a little older. Yeah. But it's not a bad hysteria, but it's for somebody
different.
that didn't grow up with it. What the hell's going on here?
Yeah. For me, I would hear stories from my family, and then when I actually went there, I was blown away.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful,
Yeah.
beautiful. It's, you know, if you're an artist, you got to say, well, I got to do something here. I don't care what kind of artist you are.
Mm-hmm. And what about the town press? In one of your photos, I saw this press and people actually like forming to print some type of publication. I'm not sure what it was.
Oh, the town press. Oh, okay. Well, that was something that Tom really had kind of set up with the minister, you know, and I was sort of an adjunct on that. Here again, I was doing the work for the government here, basically, with Tom, you know, and it was trying to turn out some kind of publication that they were doing down there. I didn't have a tremendous amount of interest in it, but they needed photographs, and they wanted me and Bill to be a part of it, you know. And that's about all I can remember of it because I wasn't that involved with it on a production level other than just taking the photographs to the ministry, printing them, and giving them to Tom.
Okay.
You know, because he was like the publisher and the minister was putting out that publication.
Your photograph, Bag Ladies, Matthews Ridge, seems to highlight a woman wearing a floral hat and stitching together a bag partially by hand. She appears calm, centered, and powerful. What did you notice about spaces occupied by women at that time? And based on what you observed, how are women holding the country together?
Look at the photograph. You know, I mean, I was just awed going into to the factory. There was only 2 women in there dealing with all this stuff. Okay, they had some people, some brothers and sisters pushing in stuff and taking out stuff and this, that, and the other. But at the time that I was there was only those 2 women, okay? And they were slowly going about producing these bags, you know, getting them, you know, repairing them, putting together new ones, this, that, and the other. And when you ask me this question of how did women be a part of what I was doing, because you do see women in my work, okay? From Indian women dancing to black women in the street, you know, and I got a thing for women, you know, I got a thing for my mother. And I was just impressed by the strength of the women in Guyana, you know, because, you know, some were in poverty, but then the ones that weren't in poverty, you know, was carrying the load. Mm-hmm. I don't care what anybody says. I know the men feel that they were carrying their load too. But the women, you know, with these children, and with this food, and the cooking, and the shopping, and then being a professional, or being a mother of 8 children, or 4 children, and whatnot, in Guyana at that particular time was tough. Mm-hmm. You know? I heard very few women, Indian, black, mulatto, whoever, complain. They just went and got it, baby. They went and got it every day. The people we were living with, they were Indian, East Indian, and they had a hub in their house too, you know, people coming from New York, people da. And what you notice about women in that kind of situation is that they're more than managers.
Yeah.
They're more than managers. That managed stuff, you can't apply to women in that situation. You know, they're directors, you know. And I learned a whole lot about Guyanese women from the people that lived under me. And they were true East Indian people. I mean, they were Muslim, they were and we got along fabulously together because we respected each other. But the women were at the center of everything they did. And they took care of my daughter like I used to come to the States, have to come to the States on business, this, that, and the other and whatnot. I had no fear of leaving Zuleika there.
Mm-hmm. Could you share a bit about your feature film, Agro-Seedsman, and how it came to be? What were you exploring with this film in particular?
Hamdi Case, who was the head of Guyana Gajraj, all right, had heard about me photographing and had seen my photographs around. And to make a long story short, he called me into his office one day. And he says, Jimmy, I want to make a feature film. And I started laughing. I said, how you going to jump from selling cars and make a feature film? What are you talking about? Do you know what it takes? He says, yes, I've been reading about it. I've been, what do you think? I'm a fool? I'm not going to call you in there to try to make a feature film and da-da-da. And then he told me what he wanted to make a feature film about, which is a seedsman. In Guyanese term, if you don't pay your bill, they come to your house and they seize your goods. Not like here in the United States. And he takes it back and he gets a fee for it.
Like a repo man?
Repo man, but let's call it seedsman. Let's stick with seedsman. So I wasn't intrigued about the project at all, to be very frank with you.
Okay.
But he was insistent. So he said, come to the house and whatnot and have dinner. So how do you say no to one of the leading lights in the PNC? Okay, this is one of your bosses. Yes, sir. I went to his house and whatnot. Plus I took Zuleika and whatnot and so she could see how this group lived. I was impressed. It was like this. He had art all around. He had flowers, but it was a modern American kind of setup, but art all around the place. Mm-hmm. I said, let's do it. So I brought in a whole team of people from New York who I knew I didn't have to train.
Yeah.
The Guyanese people were there. We were training them and trying to help them, and they know how to do films and whatnot, but their approach was basically news.
Okay.
Journalism, and they did that very well. But when you start talking about a dramatic film, even a fun dramatic film like this, you got layers of help that you need there. Makeup, da-da-da, 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 to make it look right from one scene to another.
Yeah.
And it's just got to look right, or it don't look right, If she's light-skinned in one and dark-skinned, the same person, you know what I'm saying? It can get kind of confusing to people looking at it, So those little things. But the thing about it is in the film, you got to, you got to have that. And so we took care of that with the crew that I brought down. And they had then the Guyanese under them,
Okay, assistant?
No, we couldn't, it was only about 4 or 5 people, but they had the Guyanese on the crew. We had a Guyanese crew doing the work, driving and the and the camera work and all that, assistant camera work with Guyanese. But my managers were from the States, only because I knew they knew what they were doing. I wasn't trying to put down Guyana, but we had to get this done quick. And then we had to bring the footage back to the United States to be viewed, and then it had to be, the rushes had to be looked at in New York, and sometimes I had to go back and forward.
Wow.
I knew what it would take, because there was no film labs in Guyana.
Really?
There were no film labs in Guyana. No film labs, motion picture film lab. Hamdi got into it. His brother was the seedsman. His brother's girlfriend was his girlfriend. And we found so many people down there who could act that didn't know they knew how to act. Mm-hmm. And we took them right off the streets. Once we saw some talent, damn.
What was your approach to that process with finding people in the streets for the movie?
We had to test them out. We brought them in to where we made a studio up. Hamdi gave us some space, and we brought people in to test them. We had roles, and they had to, we had a guy, a big guy, we had a woman that liked to look a certain way. We ran tests like any studio.
Yeah. Where was the space?
The space was in Guyana Gajraj, but it was a space that they weren't using. And I said, it has to have high ceilings, and stuff. And so he gave us some space.
Okay.
Let me tell you something. Any project or anything that I did in Guyana, I had help. And with Hamdi, with this film, he wanted to do the film. I mean, he wrote it, and he produced it and whatnot. So he spared us no expense to a point, and we didn't abuse the money thing. So it was run like any production. We had authors, people had to come in and test out and see if they could speak right or da-da-da, and how they move, how they look, like anything else.
Yeah.
And if we liked them, if we
Great.
didn't like them, sorry.
Yeah, I
liked
saw
it.
a trailer for it
It's fun. It
online.
was a fun film. And that's what we wanted it to be. We didn't want it to be anything about no post-colonial, this colonial. This guy is coming to take your stuff away.
Yeah,
And if you don't pay, he's going to seize it.
yeah. From what I saw briefly, it was a lot of beautiful shots.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Good people.
I can only imagine that you found joy documenting the city of Georgetown as well as various towns on the outskirts. What were you most thrilled to capture in both environments?
I think I mentioned that to you, to Rupununi.
Yeah. Maybe if you have
I had
another
never been in a
example.
place like that. And then they had all these cows.
Yeah.
I said, how do y'all feed these things? But it seems like Guyana had found a way to import from, across the border anything they needed, but there was nothing for these cows to eat out there because it was a desert.
Right.
But the land was there, and they used it and they fed the cows, and the cows were killed for meat or for milk. And they exported it and then, took it up to Georgetown and to the pasteurization plant.
Were there other areas on the outskirts that you visited?
Seawall.
Okay.
The seawall ran,
Yeah.
I was just captured by the seawall.
Let's talk about that since you talked about the desert earlier.
Yeah, well, I'm telling you, that's Guyana. I mean, Guyana is full of waterways and water this and water that and water that. And that's what I expected when I went down to the Rupununi. And the pilot kept telling me, well, Jimmy, I don't think there's going to be much water down there. And I said, what you talking about? Guyana's about water. You know what I mean? I'm telling you about Guyana's about water. And he said, well, you see. Because it wasn't nobody but me, him, and the co-pilot. The plane was my plane. Okay? And I'm saying, and I just started getting further and further away from the forest of Guyana. I'm saying, oh my God, this is Guyana? Yep. Expands for days, desert. And then we come upon these big ranches. Awesome.
Okay.
I mean, awesome. So you got the desert, and then you got the seawall. And I didn't get to take Zalika to the desert, but she saw the film. She said, hey, that's not Guyana. But we used to hang out the seawall as much as we could.
Yeah.
Just hang out. I let her run and stuff. So yeah, the seawall and the desert. Now in between, we talked about Starbeck Market and the Ministry of Information. All of that was good. But those two extremes captured me. I had never seen a seawall like that.
Yeah.
It's
Over
beautiful.
200 miles. Yeah.
I don't think I did it justice. It's one of the reasons why I'm going to go back down there.
Okay.
No, I'm going back down, and I'm going to just concentrate on the seawall. I'm not going around the Starbeck Market.
Yeah.
I'm going to stay near the seawall
The
and do what I
seawall
got
is
to
so
do and get the hell
special.
out of there.
Yeah.
A fantastic place.
Thank you. Yeah, that was great. I think that was what I was looking for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Take care.